and again, there still needs to be suffering events, because like if you don't suffer, you forget how to suffer.
Speaking
about booze,
because we're going to segue into this gentleman. So,
so this guy's an alcoholic.
So we've been friends since 2012.
Wait a second.
Yeah, hold on. Let me get there. This is a great story. Then we're going to go into the official. So back in my days at Killcliff, like I started, speaking of curdled milk and nastiness, I started this, it was a lie. Which, on purpose. And I told everyone that Matt Frazier drank during the Open, he drank a gallon of milk a day. Go Matt. And it took off like wildfire. And this kid at Grace Drescher's gym in I think it's Missouri or something, did that and came in and like for the late to do his open workout like on a Thursday as it announced, and she said he projectile vomited cheese curds all over the gym.
It's one of my favorite things to see is when somebody's like lifting. I don't know what that is. I've never been a power lifter of sorts, but when they're just really going for it and they vomit, but they complete the set like shaking and just projectile vomiting.
The best ones are on the platform. There's like people observing and standing around.
There's also something really exciting that happens on platforms sometimes, occasionally with the females.
Oh, they pee. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was always pretty fucking scared I was going to shit myself because in weightlifting, you weigh in and then you get 2 hours. So like I used to do water cuts. So I would have to like start rehydrating afterward. And then, so that was like a lot of like, what's the baby stuff you drink? Pedialyte and water. And then I had like my set stuff that I would do to like rehydrate and give myself energy before the meet. And it was a lot of like sugary stuff that could kind of make you like,
bubble guts.
Can you
I was
IVs?
pretty scared.
No,
not allowed.
It's considered doping. You get if you do 2 IVs in a day, it's considered doping, and you get a 6-month suspension.
Is that before or after UFC cut out IVs and USADA?
I don't know the genesis of it, but I know that like someone was suspended, and I was like, what the hell?
I'd also like to say I was a moron for doing water cuts in like local meets as a weightlifter. Like who gives a shit? Just go up a weight class, whatever. I
did a comp, a power athlete comp with John Welborn, and I needed to lose like 3 pounds to get into the
shit.
I was at 223. I needed to be like 219.
Weight class?
Shit actually doesn't weigh that much.
I know.
Which is really upsetting at times because sometimes it feels like that's at least 15 pounds. And it's like that was half an ounce. Jesus. I was like 3 pounds. I was like, screw it. I don't feel like. He's like, you're going to be in super heavyweights. And I was like, I don't give a shit. I got second. The guy that beat me outweighed me by 100 pounds.
Damn.
Yeah. Big old fat dude. Huge, gluttonous, fat man.
Biggest fear, lifting, just for like CrossFit or whatever. Because I went to a gym that was a CrossFit affiliate, and they did a lot of powerlifting, super good programming. It was the prolapse rectum. I saw it once on YouTube where a guy catches real low and then he blows his asshole out. Have you seen this?
No, but I'm
videos, yes, but not real. No,
currently, I'm in a Kegel position after that story. Squeezing my hand as hard as I can.
Bracing his
Everybody just sat up an inch taller. On the seat.
Great posture.
Let me correct things here.
So were you segueing into introducing the guest, or were you segueing into poop stories?
I got this.
Go for it.
Both. All right. Brent Phillips, how do you take your coffee?
Black.
All the time?
98% of the time.
Hot or cold?
Summer's cold, winter's hot.
Standard. Same. Yeah. Very similar.
So how do you take your coffee? You always ask people that. Why don't you volunteer some information for once?
Same. I do Americano typically. Most of the time it's iced unless it's balls cold, and then I get hot if I'm feeling hot.
How do you take it?
I mix it up almost every day.
Really?
I don't like have a habit. Yeah,
but if you're not here, if you're at home, let's say
home, I do usually a little of oat milk, and that's it, just to cut the acidity down a little bit.
So I had to start that after I got roofied at the IPO. My stomach was destroyed.
That's a good story.
2 or 3 months. And I would...
Roofied.
By Evan or by a stranger?
I think Kevin did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Someone roofied the 19 old fashions I drank. I was about to pass out, man.
No, absolutely not the case.
That was good.
But yeah, so my stomach was destroyed for 2 or 3 months. Like I puked for over a day, basically, after that.
Well, tell the story. It's a good story.
It's a horrible story. It's basically just me puking for a day.
You start and we'll add to it. I may embellish and make some shit up to make it better.
This is what I'm worried about. I called everybody because I'm like, so after my second drink yesterday, I don't remember anything. And everybody's like, no, you're lucid and normal. I was like, okay, thank God. And now I'm wondering if you just saved all of those stories and you're like, yeah, you fought a cop and then fell asleep in the bushes. And...
No. I was privy to kind of two pivotal moments, which was the last sighting, which was, it was, we're just having drinks. Everybody's pretty pumped about things. Screws up. Drinks. I'm like, hey, you good? Like, yeah. You're just hanging out, mingling, if you will.
Yeah.
And took off. I don't remember what time that was. Maybe 11:30. It wasn't super late. We weren't burning the midnight oil.
We had dinner till 10 probably.
Yeah. And we sat together and had the same drink for drink.
Yeah.
So then we go to the bar. We'd been there for maybe an hour and a half. And I'm like, hey, man, I'm going to bounce. You're like, yeah, cool. I'm almost done or whatever you said.
Yeah, which I have no recollection of.
And you look like
you look
normal,
fine.
like any other time that we interact, right? Well, fast forward the next morning, I'm like, weird. Later, weird. It gets better. We finished the whole thing. We go down to Times Square when they put up the Black Rifle banners. Still nothing. We're driving back and I see you like walk in the corner, coming around to the hotel. You look like you got hit by a car and you'd been homeless for 3 days.
I felt like I'd been hit by a car and had been homeless for 3 days.
Now that I'm thinking back, the morning that we went to the stock exchange for the IPO.
It was early too.
I don't remember what floor I was on at that hotel, but it was like 8th floor or something. So I'm standing there waiting for the elevator and something hit me. And I just did about a 45-degree turn, put my hands on my knees, bent over and just puked right there. And when I looked up, there was our CTO.
Zach Gleason.
Yeah.
Former.
Terrified. He's like, man, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm fine, whatever.
So
went upstairs, went about my business.
Some son of a bitch is roofying my soft friends. And I want you to stop doing it because Matt, JT, and some other guys got roofied in Austin one night, a couple months back.
So I have another kind of roofie story. Okay. So you guys know.
Is this you placing a roofie somewhere?
No, absolutely not.
It's a floor.
And if I ever find out anybody I know does that, I'm going to break every bone in their body.
It's fucked up.
So you guys know Biff, right?
Yeah.
The pilot.
JB Carlson.
Yeah. So when I was living in LA, he flew in. He was doing the flyover to USC game. So he's like, yeah, let's go to the USC game, hang out. So we got to have a couple drinks and we tied on pretty good and wake up the next morning feeling rough, like real bad. Like we're like, dude, I think we got roofied. So we're like, all right, let's go get some food in us. So we go to this brunch place and we sit at the bar at this Mexican restaurant that I used to get brunch at. And the bartender's like acting very familiar with us. It's like, this is fucking weird. Like, I don't know this person. And she's like, just acting a little too familiar. And finally she's like, do you guys not remember me? And I'm like, I have no fucking clue who you are at all. She's like, I was your bartender last night at the bar you were at. And I work here too. And we're like, me and Beth are like, oh shit. Yeah.
Piece it together.
Was there anyone like hanging out with us, like being weird? Cause like, we think we got poisoned or roofied or something. She's like, you guys each drank like 12 Manhattans. Like, she's like, I was gonna cut you off, but then I was like really impressed because you guys were holding it the fuck together. You didn't seem sloppy drunk. I was like, oh no, we were blacked out drunk. We had no fucking idea what we were. So yeah, that's why I say a lot of times when people are like, I got roofied, I'm like, did you? Or did you drink like 40 drinks?
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I've been blackout drunk and I would cop to it. That's a whole other feeling. Like, anybody you talk to that's been roofied is like, I threw up for 12. You don't throw up for 12 hours.
What were you drinking?
Beers? No, I don't drink beer. Really, I'll have a beer every now and again. But if I know it was tequila and water, so I get one tequila, one water. But
one of the worst
religious about
worst bouts of like food poisoning or like foodborne illness I've ever got. I think I got it from a dirty beer tap line. So I don't drink beer on tap, or it has to be a very reputable establishment for me to do that because those things get nasty.
So you don't hang out in reputable establishments a lot of the time.
Just not with you.
You like a backdoor alley entrance.
Yeah, a little secret knock.
The old speakeasy.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about how we all know Brent.
Should we say who Brent is?
No one cares.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Actually, if you could just take off.
We're having a great conversation.
We're having a podcast here.
So I've known Brent since 2012.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell our story?
Oh, man. Do I just dive into it?
Just get right into it. Lob that accusation.
I mean,
which is accurate and true and fair.
It's true. So,
and just.
A friend of mine and I owned a CrossFit gym opened in 2012 and immediately got plugged in with Baker, who was at Killcliff at the time. What was your role there? Because you were just Baker at Killcliff.
That was everything.
You were Baker at Killcliff.
I don't take credit for anything. And I've always said if I'm the best
title, right?
No.
You didn't have a job
One
title.
of the guys that started the company.
Okay.
I didn't have a title. I've always said if I'm the best thing we got, we're fucked. And I was the best thing that Killcliff had. Like we went from
here's why.
Yeah.
It segues nicely into, so we would order Killcliff and our company credit card was on file. And every now and again, we would get like 10 fucking cases of Killcliff show up at the door. Like, what the fuck? Who ordered this? We already have a fridge full of Killcliff. What is going on here? Trying to figure it out. Come to find out, we'd call Baker and be like, dude, what's the deal? And he'd be like, oh, my bad. I'll discount it. And give us like 20% off.
On your next order.
Yeah. In hindsight, they needed cash in the coffers. And he was like, these are our best customers. Fuck it. They'll probably need more Killcliff.
It was normally based around like a new product launch. So like we'd have a new flavor or something we drop, and I would just start. So I'd send 3 to 5 cases to everyone, and they'd send me a text like, "Oh, hey man, just saw you guys dropped a new flavor. Can we get some?" I was like, "Oh, it's on the way. It'll be there tomorrow. I already ordered it for you." Listen to me.
The old exercise sodas.
Every single time we launched a new flavor, I did that, and no one ever got mad.
I remember
there was some confusion, but there was never anger or animosity.
I wasn't fully angry because Killcliff was what year did Killcliff start? 11?
January 24th, 2011.
Yeah. So you got I was a small business owner. I knew you guys were a small business. So I wasn't angry because we fucked shit up all the time until later when I kind of pieced it together. I'm like, that dude was trying to make his numbers and try to shit up this shit. And then it was fun.
I think my last year there, I think I sold, it was like $1.2 million worth of Killcliff, and the average order size was 6 cases. That's a lot of orders.
That's a shitload.
You know what though? Back in those, like when people were really into CrossFit back then, I would crush some exercise sodas. And when the new flavors came out, I was like, oh shit, blood orange. Like it didn't taste any different.
No.
Tell us the insider baseball. Was it just like, we'll just color it purple and call it guava?
They were buying factory seconds from Monster Energy.
It was we would just come up with like new flavors and stuff, and like they were great. You know, it was a lot of fun. And this was like in the heyday of CrossFit, like when CrossFit was actually cool.
Yeah.
Unlike today, it's not at all anymore. Yeah, it's pretty lame. They've really taken all the sugar out of that Kool-Aid, but it was a lot of fun, man. And I'd just send it all over the place.
That is where I also met. So we have a weird love. What would this be? Like a love octagon? Or
it's a square.
We'll
It's a square. Let's not church it up.
Love
it's a
square. Yeah. But I met you, not through Kill Club, but through the CrossFit world in New York City. That's our whole story.
Yeah.
It's not that great.
Well, and then for years, our interactions were like, you were like, duck is disgusting. I was like, duck is delicious. So this is good. When I lived in Washington State, and I was duck hunting like 30, 40 days a year. And like, he would be like, duck is gross. I'm like, no, it's wonderful. You don't know how to prepare it.
Yeah.
And last night I finally came clean, and I was like, you know what, man? After all these years, duck's gross. You're right. 100%
it tastes
right.
better because you killed it.
Yeah.
No, it just sounds, it gives you a talking point.
It's a justification.
It's an arrow in the quiver to justify it. It's like anytime you hear someone talk about like a food or something like that, and they say, you just don't know how to prepare it, that means it requires special treatment to be palatable.
Yeah, it's like bear meat. Bear meat to me is that one where people are always, no, bear's delicious. You just have to cook it properly.
Bear has trichinosis. And if you want parasites growing in your muscle fibers, eat some bear.
Well, you gotta soak it in milk and cook it to this and that.
Yeah.
Milk, then vinegar, then whiskey.
A brine and this and all this. Yeah. Well, bear, you've got to hit 165 internal temperature for 3 minutes. Yeah. I don't want any meat that's 165 on the inside. I mean, that's warm.
Yeah, that's gross.
Yeah.
I think you talk yourself into it. Like, no, it's good because it took so much preparation to make it palatable.
Yeah.
You had to have a reason to go kill it anyway. Yeah. So you're like, well, it'll be tasty.
I didn't realize that you owned a CrossFit gym back then.
Yeah.
Was that in North Carolina?
Yeah. So we were the first CrossFit gym next to Camp Lejeune. So we were like right out the front gate.
What was the name of it?
Silwar.
CrossFit Silwar. What was the genesis of the name?
I had a charity that I was running called Silent Warrior Foundation. And I couldn't come up with a name for the gym. And I didn't want to tie it to the charity, but I also am not that creative of a guy. So I was like, let's just chop this shit up. And a la Silwar, it was actually athletics because we did strongman, Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting, and then we affiliated with CrossFit.
Silwar? Yeah. Silent Warrior?
Yeah.
I thought it was like some special operations code word.
No, it's some bullshit I made up.
Oh, that's such a disappointment.
Yeah.
Is that gym still there?
No, so we sold that. So basically we started SOFLETE out of that gym and then sold the gym maybe a year later to a guy who owned another CrossFit affiliate, and he shut it down 6 months later. So it was running and profitable from 2012 to 17, and then we sold it, and
Okay.
no longer profitable apparently.
So he fucked it up.
I'm not going to say that, but yeah.
Which is common. There's a lot of...
Yeah, so the issue was if you buy a business that's profitable and operating, if I did that, I would come in and go, what do they have going on that's working? And then maybe make some minor changes to optimize what's going on. And
order some different flavors of Killcliff.
Yeah, more Killcliff.
a lot more.
Yeah, more
6
weight
cases.
belts and things. But no, so he came in and basically the parameters under which we coached, it's like one of them was coaches are coaches, they're not cheerleaders, right? So we're not sitting there clapping hands going, yay, do air squats.
Clock watchers.
Yeah, not my cup of tea. I'm not the guy that wants somebody cheerleading me. That's not the coach that I wanted to be. And one of the first things he put out to the coaches is that you're there as entertainers as well as coaches, which I'd never think is a great idea. But even if it is, the gym had been built on the premise that coaches are coaches. They're not trainers. So why would you come in and change that? And he went across the board, essentially going backwards from everything that we had done. And whether it was better or not, the culture we had built for 5 years didn't support that. So it kind of doomed to failure.
I do think, I mean, it's funny talking about this CrossFit stuff. Like when I was coaching CrossFit, I think there is a value in not having across the gym, across the board coaching kind of standard, because then you can have a variance and people will come in for the people they like.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you wanted to come in and just be told you were a
get
piece
that
of
even
shit
with-
by a stoic asshole who's like really sleep deprived, come get coached by Jariko. But if you want to have like a clock watcher who cheers for you and whatever, there's other coaches for that.
Yeah, and we had drastic variance in coach personality, but we still followed the same structure, principles, et cetera. So there was continuity because you didn't want Kevin in there coaching and telling people to push their knees in for a back squat. And then Baker comes in and he's like, no, actually you want to push your knees out or whatever the difference is. That'd be one wrong and one right, but there's multiple ways to do a right. Yeah. So we standardized everything down to like Olympic weightlifting technique. So technique being the way that you move the bar, form being, are you moving the bar safely? Like safe is pretty much agreed upon by everybody, and technique is up for debate, right? Like you guys all know this from Olympic weightlifting. Yeah. Are you doing John Norris thing? Are you what are you doing? You could do it safely, but it's a different technique. Yeah.
Did he say John Norris?
Yeah, I did.
Well, he's like on one end of the spectrum.
Is he still alive?
I don't know.
He had a heart attack.
Yeah, he did.
And then he got into bodybuilding
and steroids, big steroids. He had a heart attack. Shocker. Shocker. His head was the size of my shoulders before steroids.
He was a dude that when you went to his thing, one, he was a character, which I always is interesting to me because I'm boring. But two, he would tell you he walked into his first gym as like a meth addict off the street.
Yeah, crackhead,
Yeah, crackhead off the street, which is
very extremely motivated.
I challenged him to a fight one time.
Did he do it?
No, I told him I'd pay him $2,500 to show up. He didn't have to win. He just had to show up.
I'm surprised he didn't fight you. I would think he would be the guy that'd be like...
This is when he moved to Oregon and he was close to where I was living in Washington.
Yeah. There's some
I was like, I'll come to you.
In that world, in the Olympic weightlifting world. There's some characters, man. Now, I don't know about it anymore, but there were some real weirdos.
I'm sure there's like, you have to be a weirdo to dedicate your life to standing on a platform, putting a barbell over your head. Like that's a weird thing to dedicate your life to.
Especially in this country.
Yeah.
Where, the numbers aren't that great.
I dedicated like 4 years of my life to that.
Yeah.
You did other things in that time.
That's true. Yeah.
So let's talk about something really interesting. So where'd you go to high school? What state?
Wilmington, Delaware.
Okay.
City and state. I gave you more information.
For those of you listening that don't know where that state is, I don't know where it is either. So don't feel bad.
I tell people Philadelphia. So it's like 20 minutes south.
You drive through it on your way to New York. I know that.
Yeah. It's on is that by New York? Kind of. Is that by Georgia? No, not by Georgia.
So what happened after high school?
I did a semester of community college.
Okay.
Me too.
And then this is a recurring theme throughout my life. I had a good dirt bike accident where I was laying in a bed for a day or two and decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. And I joined the Marine Corps.
Okay. What did you do in the Marine Corps?
I was a recon Marine and then MARSOC.
Okay. How long were you recon Marine?
Like 4.5 years, and then MARSOC for 4.5, 5. So I did basically just shy of 10 years, and that was split between those two. So I went in 2008, and then I went to MARSOC in 2012.
How'd you like that?
I loved it. It was great. I only got out, so my partners in SOFLETE wanted me to get out to run the company for 2 years to see where we could take it. And then my plan was to go back in because I really enjoyed the work. And then things just got really busy with SOFLETE. I was like, well, I'm not going back to that. If that makes sense.
Yeah. How'd you like your time?
I loved it. It was great. It was phenomenal. I don't tell people to go that direction, like young kids that talk to us, young men that talk to us, hey, I want to go into special operations. I don't tell them to go that path because I don't think it's the most direct path to the way that the things they want to do, if that makes sense.
What advice do you give kids though that like, hey, I want to join the military, I want to be a Green Beret, I want to be a SEAL,
So recently I've started telling them, you need to view this as service because more than likely you're not going to make it. Like even
just go ahead and quit.
That's
true. No. Statistically, everybody who didn't make it set out to make it, right? So why are you different? And you have your own ideas of why you're different, but statistically speaking, you're not going to make it. So statistically speaking, you're going to end up you're not going to be a Navy SEAL, a CCT, a Ranger, a MARSOC guy. You're going to be something else in the service that they place you into when you aren't. And MARSOC's different because you can't go straight into MARSOC. So now there's like other wickets you have to hit. And so I tell guys, go in to serve your country, and if you end up with a really cool job because you stayed the course, then that's a bonus. And I probably need to phrase that. I do phrase that differently to them. But if this doesn't work out, what I hate to see is guys that come up to me, and it happens to you guys, I'm sure, that say I was just a insert job, infantry. It boils my blood because it's not something. I'm sure there's soft guys that say that, but I don't say that. I don't say that guy was just an infantry guy. I may say he was an infantry guy. Or if we're talking about something specific to SOF, I may say he wasn't SOF. He has this relevant piece of information. But hearing guys say that, I don't like it because they raise their right hand. For most of my generation, if they did in that time, and your guys' generation, they went to war. Like they did a lot of shit that's notable and worth it and in a complex job serving their country. So that's why I tell guys, first and foremost, go in with the idea that you're going to serve your country and get comfortable with the idea that you may not become a insert special job here.
I do think they're way more prepared than we collectively were.
Well, absolutely.
There's an entire industry and the internet and everything else where they know what they're getting into.
The internet is why.
Yeah, they know the standards. Well, there's businesses and there's screening. I mean, I had no idea. Guys come up to me, and it's been a theme throughout my career, going from battalion, Ranger Battalion to PJ staff. Tons, like CAG Sergeant Majors. Hey, my son wants to be a Marine or a Ranger. Can you please make him be a PJ? I'm like, I can educate him on what it is. But they'll come in thinking like, well, I did all this training and I know what the standards are for 8-week, 10-week, whatever. But then they psych themselves out a little bit, regardless of the fact that they train up. And then I boil it down to, I didn't know anything. No. I literally just showed up because that's what I wanted to do. And I will do it, or I will, put my best foot forward.
You had no standard for... Like I knew I had to hit a 275 physical fitness test, which is like, you have to be pretty, like really fit to hit that. But I had never done 20 pull-ups until I showed up at recon school, because in all of the other things that I did, 16 or 17 pull-ups was like, damn, that dude's really fit. He's doing 16 or 17 dead hang pull-ups. And I remember I was starting in like the mid back, like back 3/4 of the way through the line to do pull-ups. And every dude, like 50 guys in front of me, jumped up, did 20 pull-ups, which maxed out the physical fitness test, and then got off the bar. I was like, holy fuck, like this is the standard. And so I'd never done 20 before. And I just showed up, was like, well, I guess we do 20, right? And did 20 pull-ups. But now all these guys know
low-key flex.
Need to do my...
It's a low-key flex.
It's definitely not a flex. Army guys think that, but now I think the Marine Corps standard now is 22 or 24 pull-ups.
No, wait a second. It is a flex.
It is
It
not.
is literally their recruiting thing. They have a pull-up bar with
that
the
real
recruiters.
jiggly one.
Yeah. And they're like, hop up there and see what you can do.
Yeah.
The jiggly one.
Have you ever gotten on that thing?
Yes, fuck yeah.
It's
knocked
like
out
they didn't
20.
put it together correctly.
It's got some whip in it. Yeah, it's got some whip.
And knocked out 20, one for the Airborne Ranger in the sky.
But-
I was like,
But
But my point is, those kids know now. They're like, I got to do 20 pull-ups and run a sub 20-minute 5K to be competitive. Like they know that as they go.
But
in.
hold on. So, okay, they know that standard. And that 20 pull-ups for an 18-year-old, 22-year-old, whatever, that doesn't seem outlandish.
No, it's not.
But I don't think that has anything to do with them passing the selection and getting through and making it to the final destination. It just makes like an initial step easier. So
it's
like
their foot in the door.
Yeah. So like if you guys, it allowed you to get to the next evolution, the next test or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, even if you guys had the training when you were going through, would it have made you better? Would it have made it any different?
It would have made my life way easier.
Really?
They do
it's
a whole bunch of shit right now. I mean,
Yeah.
they will literally run these dudes. I don't know what the fee is. They pay some guy or a former ex, just fill in the blank. They'll do land nav. They'll do, pistol carbine. They'll do whatever the fuck to try to spin them up, basically to go to selection. It's a whole industry that I wasn't aware of until a friend of mine was like, oh yeah, I'm doing this thing. There's a guy that wants to be a ranger. Yeah. There's a MARSOC guy.
So there's a flip
SEAL
side
dude.
to that coin though, where you're showing up to a test. Part of that is showing up and not having the answers to the test and figuring it out and being uncomfortable, which is a critical component to these jobs. And these guys have effectively done it already. I'm not saying it's cheating. And if you're not cheating, you're not trying, right? I would have definitely done one of those camps or whatever when I was 18 years old if I had that opportunity. But I think you now take a little bit away from the actual selection process where it's like you didn't know what every day was going to be in any of those selections or courses. And now they kind of do.
So like I get asked, I was never in the military. I get asked all the time. Melissa sent me a text this morning. There's a kid in our gym named George who wants to go into special forces. And she's like, all your friends, all the guys you hang out with did that, would you like talk to him? And I was like, well, yeah, but like, I think every single person, just from hanging around all you guys and spending years around all y'all, I think that every person, the moment they sign the paper to try out for that, they know the outcome. They know if they're going to make it already or if they're not. It may not be on the forefront of their head, but somewhere in their body, they know if they're going to finish it or not.
Yeah, I would say like...
I'd say half of them are wrong.
No, meaning, I think that most of them know they're not going to make it.
I don't agree.
Really?
No, I don't agree.
Yeah, I don't agree either,
actually. I wrote...
As if you guys know what you're talking about and I don't, huh?
I would... So I worked at RIP before it was RASP. And I would say 80% of the people that quit, that self-select, had the ability to pass.
But it's not.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's a mental. I'm talking about the mental component. Right. Like you can do all the push-ups and sit-ups, and you can go in healthy, properly trained, diet, nutrition on point, blood work, everything. You are as in good a shape as you're ever going to be to take on those tasks. Mentally, you either have it or you don't.
Yes,
yeah, I agree.
But you 100%. Don't know until you get there because it's no different than the guy that thinks he's funny or thinks he's awesome, and you think he's a douche, but he doesn't have that perception of himself. You know what I mean? Like,
so you're not a quitter. So I think that's
right. But you have that guy that's like, I'm going to make it.
But he says it. He might say it. He
also thinks it. He really thinks it about himself.
See, I've seen guys, there's also a piece where you have to pass or be selected.
Mm-hmm.
So like I can think of a guy that I went to, and I hate where this conversation's going, by the way.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And all these guys and all the civilians listening love it too.
Yeah.
So get my back on this.
So this guy, I call it the X factor, and that's basically the willingness to do the things, but that's separate from the ability to do the things. So you have to have the ability, which is you can measure that out. You could say it's 20 pull-ups and a 20-minute 5K or better than both of those numbers or whatever services, physical. You can measure that. The X factor, you can't. And that's kind of what you're talking about. And you hit that at different points. You hit that in a good selection event where it's like you're alone in the woods and you're lost. Are you going to walk to somewhere you can figure out where you are? Or are you going to walk to a road, put out your beacon and quit? But you also hit that, like you saw guys hit that going into combat where it was like, either they wanted to go or they didn't. And maybe they're in that special unit, but they still didn't want to go. Like we've all seen that where it's like a guy doesn't he doesn't want to go to the show. And that's fine. You don't, like Kevin's saying, you don't know whether you're that guy or not until you're there. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. Like you can fantasize about it all you want. But on the quitting side, I remember watching a guy I went to selection with literally crying because he was failing an event. And this dude was in better shape than I was. He was harder. He worked harder. He wasn't as intelligent, and I'm pretty self-aware. And that was where his hang up was like he couldn't conceptualize the thing that we needed to do. But he was crying because he's like, dude, I got one more shot at this and I'm done. And he was done. They washed him out of the pipeline. He was done and back to his old unit.
Everything I've seen in the selections I've done, like a lot of the people that quit, they quit because they think they're going to fail anyway. Where I was like, hey, you guys got to kick me out of here. I suck at most stuff, but like, I'm not going to tell you that.
But you've told me a couple of times, like your thing is performance anxiety. Mm-hmm. The things that would rattle you was like you were scared of not or failing an event or not performing or something. Mm-hmm. That was the thing that you've told me that rattled you.
Yeah. I would way rather get shot than look like I wasn't good at my job.
So I asked my brother, I was like, Mitchell, did you ever think about quitting? You know, when my brother was a Force Recon Marine, I was like, did you ever think about quitting? He's like, no. The thing that kept me up at night was laying in bed and thinking of having to call our mother and tell her that I failed. He's like, I never once thought about quitting because I was too terrified of failing. And that's a mindset. Yeah. I am very self-aware. I don't possess that same thing that my brother has. I have other skills. He's got that. And what I was getting at when I was saying is I think that everybody knows if they have the mental toughness or not. Because people along the lines, I guess your average guy going in is 18 to 22 or something like that, joining the military, whatever. You've either quit at shit in life or you haven't up to that point. I don't think that you guys have probably ever quit anything you've ever done.
I quit fast pitch baseball.
I'm not,
because I was getting beamed by during tryouts. I get like the pitchers were trying out at the same time. So and I was just getting beamed. This kid's name was Bud. I don't remember his last name. Bud, if you're out there, I don't know what I'm going to say to you next, but I was just getting pegged by the pitcher. And we were like 13, 14. This kid could wing the ball. It hurt so bad. So I took like 10, 15 whacks with baseball. And I was like, man, fuck this. Dude, sucks. Dude, I'm not doing this.
When we lived in New York City when I was in second grade, I got beamed by a pitch and shit my pants. Swear to God. I've got a better story than that.
That went way better than I thought it was.
I literally shit my pants.
Yeah. Did you quit baseball after that?
No.
No, I'm a quitter.
But I finished the game with like, and when I say shit my pants, I don't mean like a little marker. I'm talking
like a blowout.
Yeah.
And did you slide into the next base just to mask?
No, I got fucking drilled in the head. I shit myself. So my very good friend Ryan Sheehan. So God, this is one of my favorite sports stories. Ryan is 6'5" lefty. He was a pitcher. Dog shit fastball, piece of shit curveball, just terrible, threw junk. But he had a first ballot Hall of Fame pickoff move to first base. And what he would do is he would hit people on purpose and then pick them off at first. And he got ejected from a few games. And Savannah High, back in the day, inner city Savannah High, they didn't have a softball team. And they had this white girl on their baseball team. And he drilled her twice. And picked her off at first both times. And the second time he went, get your ass to the dugout. Got kicked out of the game. So, Ryan, if you're listening, great story. But I derailed that. But yeah.
I derailed it. Because you've never quit anything, but I have.
Yeah. But I shit my pants because I got hit in the head with a ball in second grade.
The direction we went was much better than the direction we went.
So what was the hardest thing?
Oh, I hate your questions.
The civilians love it.
That's why we bring it.
I know.
So
just to fuck with me.
You went recon and then you went through the MARSOC process, right?
I did, yeah.
What was the hardest thing about MARSOC? Getting there, like making it, the tryouts and all that stuff.
So when I went through, it was the first half, which is the hardest half, was kind of a copy paste of recon school. So I cheated. I had the answers to the test before I did it. It's long though. It's a long.
How are you allowed to say?
Yeah. It's now I think it's a year and a half, but it was 9 months because I was an idiot and opted out of language. So, I didn't opt out. Language was optional back then, but if you scored really well on the D Lab, which is the test to see your aptitude for learning
Defense Language Aptitude Battery.
Yeah. So if you scored poorly enough, then you didn't have to go to language. Because like, we're not sending this idiot to 6 months of language school. He's just going to carry a saw anyway because he's an idiot. And so didn't want to go to language. So I threw that test out as hard as I could and didn't go to language. Now you have to go to language. So like even if you're an idiot, you're going to 6 months of language school. But the length, the guys that were able to make it that didn't, we had a lot of guys that couldn't keep their life together, if that makes sense. So in hindsight, that was one of the hangups that would be more, and I didn't have my life together. I just didn't get a DUI or anything when I was going through. I was smart enough to like pretend it was together, if that makes sense.
But nothing physical was hard or challenging?
No, because I'd done it before. So, and it was
so what you're saying is it's easy to become a MARSOC Marine. That's great.
Yeah, it's really easy.
It's easy.
What I'm more saying is there was no standout moment. Like I didn't have a come to Jesus moment with myself where I was like, you can't quit, right? Like that wasn't a thought process for me. It was like, okay, we got to do push-ups until this guy's tired of making us do push-ups. Like I'll do the push-up. But it's also a very professional course because you've already been assessed and selected where they're like, this guy's trainable. He has the personality that we want. Has these attributes already. So the goal of the course is not to weed you out. And the selection process is extremely professional where you're still selected in the sense it's not pass fail. You could pass it all and we still don't want you because you're a dickhead, but there's nobody in your face yelling at you in that course, which is kind of a nice way to go through it. Like your parts where you're out in the woods by yourself for, an hour or hours on end doing land nav, it's just you with a piece of paper getting to your points, right? And
when you have the confidence too. Like I had not the same, but similar, I went through another selection. It's like, well, fuck, man, the last X amount of years, I've become tougher mentally, tougher physically. I know what I've done. I know how to do my job. I'm just going to apply it here. You know what I mean?
I had the keys to the city at that point, I guess.
So let me ask you this. So like stuff that you guys did, later in your careers, like there's obviously a degree of like the physical debilitation from being a ranger and, combat and all that stuff and being a recon Marine and all that stuff and ranger. And like, does that affect your performance? Like I'm not as fast. Like I've got some little nagging injuries, meniscus injuries and stuff like that. Like how big of a deal is that?
It's huge. It for a lot of guys, that is the make or break of their careers. Like, are you too injured to continue doing the job? And it can happen quickly. I broke my tib fib on a dirt bike and that very easily could have ended my career right then and there if it didn't heal back properly.
I do think though there's an equation, and I don't know the physiology of it or whatnot, but my mark was age 30, right? So when you get to 30-ish, plus or minus, probably a little different for everybody, but your mental fortitude to do whatever it is that you need to do kind of kicks you back to like 25. You know what I mean? You can push through discomfort or old injuries and things like that, and you're able to get through what you need to do based on how mentally tough you are at that point, because that is growing also. So I think there's this balance, and there's that sweet spot where you're like running on all cylinders. You're very mentally tough.
Don't need sleep, can't get tired. Yeah.
I mean, you do, but that's where the brain takes over and you're like, nope, this is how it has to be. This is what I have to.
In that world, so my own experience, when I was fucking 18, I went to RIP, went to Ranger Battalion. Then when I was in E8, they came out with this new policy in the Ranger Regiment that in order to take your next position as either a platoon sergeant or a first sergeant, you had to go through assessment selection. You had to go through RASP 2, which RASP 2 is not like RIP. You're not getting motherfucked and it's a gentleman's course, but the standards of performance are the same.
Yeah, it's hard to get PT events, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, constant assessment from the psych and the cadre and all that. So I went to that after putting in, I think I'd been in regiment 12 years at that point, right? So like I had some miles on my fucking frame. But like you were saying, I kind of had the answers to the test, right? So when I think about, like, to go back earlier, like, does having that knowledge help? Like, it's a bandwidth thing, right? Like, yeah, maybe my knees hurt like fuck, and that cut some of my bandwidth out because I was like dealing with that. But I also knew the game so well that I was just like, okay, and they do the little like crucible event at the end and they're like, everybody get on the road, we're running back. I was like, no, we're not. You know, like we're going to run a few 100 meters and we're going to get on a fucking truck. Like you're just trying to get a couple guys to quit right now.
Right.
You know, like, cause I'd worked at the course before. So like, it's all just little things that can nibble at that bandwidth. But I think having experience, it way outweighs having like the perfect physical makeup
Absolutely.
to pass the course.
Okay.
Did anybody quit
Oh yeah.
at that moment?
No way. Really?
Oh no, not in RASP too.
Okay.
But I saw that work in like when I was a cadre and and when I went through others, like that works great on like real dumb people. Like
or if they're at that cusp, like land nav, they hit their 5th point and you give them the verbiage that they're getting a 6th and they're watching the sunset and they're like, fuck man, I can't do one more. The guys will quit.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is, and something that I actually enjoy talking about is those units assess and select for your stress tolerance as well. They're really bad about giving you tools to increase that or decrease the stress you're carrying. But the stress tolerance is one of those things that you want a guy with high stress tolerance so that if he sprains an ankle on an insert, he can still complete the mission or whatever it is, right? And so
that's the, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, they're picking those guys that they think like this guy can break his back and probably heal up and keep doing it in a year.
I think that something we didn't address earlier because we went down a shit story, but the thing that you can't, and I've been through a handful of selections, different types, different standards for passing, some more PT, physical fitness kind of things, some water, some shooting standards. You can't evaluate how you're going to perform under stress until you're there. And everybody performs differently. I used to kind of joke and I felt like it was true, but you're 25% dumber walking into a selection on certain things because you can't metabolize it the way you could on a couch. If I gave you the problem or the task on the couch and you're like, oh yeah, I could do that. 2 rounds, 2 seconds from concealed at X distance, no problem. Go out on the range, do it by yourself. Now I run the timer and you're shooting for a job and a livelihood. You're not the same.
There's a pass fail, yeah.
Well, there's a pass fail, but it's how you metabolize the stress, what your threshold is for it.
So, which leads me into my next question. You joined, what year were you in the Ranger Battalion? Was it
97?
97?
2001.
And then when did you join the military? 08?
Yeah.
So how much like evolution of training, exercise physiology, longevity of career, things like that? Like, so I'm from Savannah, Georgia, which is where 1st Ranger Bat is located. I have seen some massive Army Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
They get into battalion, deploy, they're good Rangers, and they start lifting like big weights, like super big dudes. And I've seen numerous chubby / fat Green Berets, masters of planning.
We need one here to defend them.
Well, we don't. I was going to say we don't have any fat Green Berets here, but we got a little pudge here. But the training and how much has that evolved over the years? Like the way you trained from, let's say, physical, like exercise and all that stuff from like 98 to say like 2005, it had to evolve drastically.
We had gym.
It was still,
I just pulled that out of my ass. You know what I mean? But like you're
it
extending,
is a different beast altogether.
You're extending careers now exponentially
Yeah.
based on what we know training wise and all that stuff. Like when did that really start coming into the picture?
What was the dude's name in the gym? Wasn't his name Jim?
He died.
Oh,
yeah, he's
from exercise.
Well, I mean,
no. It was a trickle. It trickled in, but in Ranger Regiment, we came out with this thing called RAW, the Ranger Athlete Warrior, right? Which was a product of, we had a trainer at 275, a civilian that we hired. He just sat in our gym. His name was Jim. And, basically taught us like how to not round our backs when we squatted and shit like, or, hey, maybe you should squat, guy.
Yeah.
That's why you're always getting knee and ankle injuries because you have fucking chicken legs.
Well,
and lots of running.
So it was a trickle. But in the Ranger Regiment, things are usually on kind of a 2-year cycle because we have a regimental commander for 2 years. And that commander will come in and he'll have his things he wants to leave his mark on the regiment, right? And I think the raw person was around 06.
That's what I was going to say. 06 to me is when I would guess it started.
Let me rephrase the question. That answers my question. But the GWAT, 2001, we go to war, and you guys are doing your jobs, high tempo, everything you've been training for. You're putting it into action. How quickly and how much did that evolve? Like, okay, we don't, hey, Bob, you don't need to be able to deadlift 750 pounds to operate effectively in Afghanistan.
Well, that was never, it started to go it started as we're going to run, do push-ups and swim until we can't anymore. And that was your PT. It wasn't called training. It was, it was PT, which I guess is an acronym for training, but it wasn't like weight training wasn't, even when I went in, that was the anomaly more than the rule. Like run, swim runs or ruck fin runs were a huge deal in recon battalion, where like that's what you did for your workout is you ran to the beach, you swam for a couple miles, and then you ran back to your barracks.
I think it was a little case specific too, because we would have like a platoon or a company that was, or even a squad, and especially while they deployed, all of a sudden dudes would get kind of jacked, and then you'd go back and who knows, change command, whatever. You'd start running more, doing whatever the task was. So it kind of ebb and flow a bit. But I was a little bit more switching services, going from, gym. Even when I went through selection to do PJ stuff, they had a sports physiologist. I mean, he was like on it. And that was kind of my first look at very calculated. And they would break into run groups like, hey, these are your times for these distances. You have the potential to do this. So you need to be in this group. All the way to the point of today at my unit, we have, I call it church and the confessional. We have a gym that looks like a professional athlete gym, like a college level. I wouldn't say pro. Maybe some do. Maybe
SEC caliber gym, yeah.
Sure. And then we also have human performance. So if I'm fucked up, I can throw my name on the list any day, any time, and I can get needling, I can get cupping, they actually taking care of you. And when you're injured, they fix you by and large in-house with our human performance team.
I think most of the SOCOM units
you're getting more how much money would you say the government has invested in the three of you guys? Millions of dollars.
Millions. Yeah.
So like being tough and like pushing through injuries and stuff like it, but that's another question. Like how did you guys deal with that? Like injuries and stuff, like I've always heard a ranger take a knee and drink some water, like
that's how you do it. You just take a knee and drink water.
Yeah. And that heals everything.
You take prescription painkillers. That's how I did it.
But and then there's also like showing weakness, like, my knees hurt, or like I've got an injury.
I didn't know what a foam roller was until I left Ranger Regiment. Right? Like you knew about stretching, but it was like that stretching is what you did when you stood around and bullshitted until you were ready to go run.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It
like how to heal soft tissue injuries and ligament strains.
That was a
and sprains.
cultural issue that I've talked to guys recently that they think the pendulum has begun to swing too far. And so in a selection event, I am of the opinion, whatever your selection is should be hard. Like, as hard as you can make it. There should not be any type of performance training in that. Like, fuck these guys up. And if they pop out on the other end, then you build the athlete. And I've heard that is not the case, where they're trying to build guys in selection. And my thought process there is
dumb.
Run what you brung, man. Like, show up ready to go. Tell them the things they need to hit. You got a 15-mile ruck in whatever time with X amount of weight and a swim. Put that out there so they know what the standards are. But now if you don't hit those standards, that's on you. And that needs to just be a very physically challenging event. Then you build guys after.
Yeah. Then you need to go to, what's the Air Force Base in San Antonio where they do the Air Force?
Lackland.
So John Welborn and I went and toured the Lackland facility where they put guys through CCT, the Battlefield Airmen, whatever the program is. PJ CCTs, that's where they all go to start their training. Everything there is monitored. Their beds are cooled. They have copper wiring in their beds. Their beds are a certain temperature at night.
What year was this? This is in selection.
This is 2 years ago.
Oh, I have no idea. So in 2005, when I went to the selection, I thought, so the standards never changed, but the programming was not haphazard. And there was an actual strength coach, running coach, swim coach. It's not that they were trying to dim down the standards. It was, they were trying to allow you through the 10 weeks, 12 weeks, because there's a pre and then the actual event. They're trying to build you up. And that's the way the standards were also designed. You know, they're increasing for X. So I thought it was smart, but it wasn't giving them any quarter.
Yeah, they have float tanks there. They have everything.
Now that's all gay.
Hold on. John Welborn had just come back like 2 weeks prior from Dam Neck. I think he was doing some training stuff with like Gold Squad guys or something like that. And he said, it was me, John Welborn, and like a handful of generals. And he said, I just came back from Dam Neck. And he goes, I've never seen, they don't even have anything like this.
Yeah.
And the generals are like, well, you know, they want to give the guys their every single possible opportunity to pass, which makes sense. But they were talking about like, well, you know, it's like, well, you're just kind of making really expensive quitters.
Yeah. I think you got to pay the man before you get all the niceties.
Yeah.
And that's not even an earn it thing. It's like, we want the dude that can go into an ambiguous situation, figure it out, and excel, not the guy that needs to be coddled all the way through.
So there's a, like everything, there's a balance, right? So in regiment right now, before skill level 1 people go to RASP 1, they now have to do pre-RASP, which is basically where they teach them not how to be tough, but be like, okay, this is what discomfort feels like. Because, you know, I'm buddies with a couple of guys there that are still there at high levels, and that they said that they wouldn't be able to run RASP as the POI it is now with the current candidates coming in that they have. No one would pass. So they do have to do a certain amount of stuff to set them up for success.
Right.
The course hasn't changed, but the way that they prep people has. So like, I don't know what pre-RASP is. I think it's like 3 or 4 weeks, but they come in and they're like, hey, here's how you do a fucking road march. And like, this is what it's going to feel like. Because I hate to sound like a boomer, but a lot of the people that are coming in just haven't been uncomfortable. And they think, oh, this is my last job in the Army, I taught ROTC up in New York, you know, that's where I met. And I remember new cadets coming in and we'd do PT, and like, they would come and tell me they had to go to the doctor. And I'm like, oh, fuck, what's wrong? And they're like, I said, they were just sore. They'd never been fucking sore.
Yeah.
So like, you know, again, I don't want to sound like a boomer, but like, it's a generational thing.
I was waiting for you to say it, and I disagree. I think it's you're getting different people now.
Yeah, but that's society's fault. Life is easier.
But what I'm saying is there's kids in that generation that are doing hard shit. Like there's a kid that I race dirt bikes with who breaks bones annually and trains his ass off and does really hard shit, but he's just turned 19. He's not going into the military now, whereas I think the years I came in, he would have. So the kids that are looking for all of the things that bring, I don't think you're getting the same person from the age demographic.
So we were shot. I was talking to a guy, a Delta guy, older guy.
He flew for the airlines?
Huh?
The airline?
Yeah, he's a pilot for Delta Airlines.
Yeah.
And we were talking, and he said that, you know, Colin Powell came through and did like an assessment. They let him witness their entire, like, to get into Delta, what's it called? Selection. And he goes, this is the most, it was about equality in the unit, and like, you know, a certain number of, you know, different, you know, guys, different races and stuff. They wanted to see more. And so they opened it up and let Colin Powell come look at the whole thing. And he said, this is the most professionally organized thing I've ever witnessed in my life. He goes, but I do have one suggestion. I would ask that you put swimming stuff at the back of it, because there are people that have never been exposed to swimming, and you got to give them a chance to try and learn.
Right.
And I was like, well, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's not if you don't, you know, it's like, toss me into the cockpit of an F-15 and be like, go fly this thing, motherfucker. I'm like, I don't know how. You know, it's not my fault. I'm not tough or not smart. Right. I just don't. Could
you kind of, before you jump out, could you give me a few pointers here? Maybe I think I can pull it off. But yeah. No, but I think that the stuff that I saw, it's like they were setting them up, giving them every single possible opportunity to pass. But it made it look kind of, it's like, well, this doesn't seem like super tough, you know, like. But I guess to your point, it does need to be hard as shit, right?
Well, but there's times and places, right? So I think all of the selections have a pre-selection, and that I think you could give guys the tools, but it's not enough time to really drive adaptation anyway. Like a 3-week pre-selection, you're not building an athlete in 3 weeks. It takes years to do that. And so what's the point is my question. If you're trying to teach the guy to tie knots for a knot test, that makes sense. But if you're putting him in a float tank so that he can hit a heavier back squat,
I'm not making that up.
Yeah, and
that's ridiculous.
More comfortable under a ruck. I don't think that's what the right answer looks like. But I think the pendulum could swing the other way. So you make guys live in the dirt and treat them like shit in selection, and then post-selection, you're like, hey, this is the guy.
He's tough.
We're going to train him. He's tough enough. And now you pamper his ass and make him the best athlete you can. And again, there still needs to be suffering events, because like if you don't suffer, you forget how to suffer. So
agreed.
We changed it when I was my last rotation at MARSOC. We changed our workup. So the first thing a team did when they got together to get ready for deployment was a greenside reconnaissance patrol. What
does that mean?
It means you walk in the woods living out of your ruck for an extended period of time. And we would go so far as to do an amphib insert. So you would swim into a beach and then and it's kind of just the shittiest, most boring thing that you do, I would argue, maybe SEALs in the submersibles, that's probably more boring, but short of that, it's like the most thing all soft units kind of do. And so we would kick it off with that. And usually it's North Carolina. So it's extremely gross and hot in the summer and you don't want to be there. And then winters are like bone-chilling cold.
Humidity,
It's horrible. Like, I'd rather be in an Idaho winter than a North Carolina winter.
Fucking every time.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
And so we would kick it off with that.
I hate it.
What the GWAT did is made everybody want to be an assaulter where you get off a helicopter, you go kick in a door, you get back on the helicopter an hour later.
Oh yeah, brother.
Go get food. Like
he knows
Rangers,
about that.
like, yeah. And you lose, in my opinion, if you just went too far in one direction, you lose that ability to suffer. So I think every once in a while you got to have that man check. The man check's important. I think that's important for everybody.
Did the training and stuff stateside? Did it fit the mission overseas? Like, were you studying the right notes?
Yeah. Because this is going to sound weird coming from me for people that know me, but I actually like doctrine. Like, if you apply doctrine, it works. And so, like, you make an L and you win. I heard somebody say that once, and it was like, yeah, that's kind of always true, right? If you make an L correctly for an ambush, like, you win the ambush, right?
Yeah.
There's other things that go into that. It's a gross oversimplification, but that's the reality. Is like, the doctrine works. That's why it's the doctrine. So if you copy and paste it, now there's nuance when you go from AO to AO or area to area, like country to country, that do change. But yeah, I would say that the notes were pretty correct.
What was your best skill?
Like, personally?
Yeah, as a soldier. What was the one thing that you were like, I am really good?
Yeah. Tell him.
You just call him a soldier?
Or whatever the term is.
In the profession of soldiering, I think you mean. That's
is that not a word?
It's a fucking Marine right here.
Dear
people
God.
get up in arms.
Okay, what?
I knew what you meant. In the profession of soldiering,
what was your best skill?
The profession of arms, let's call it that.
Yeah, I like that.
As a warrior.
If you broke it down to like one tasking, I was really good at land nav. Like, very good at land navigation.
That fucks a lot of people up, doesn't it?
It does. So I hate telling selection stories, but it's kind of funny. So my buddy, he's been best operator award at MARSOC multiple times. Like, he's the guy where it's like, no, man, that dude does all the shit correctly. We went to selection together, and I'm faster at running than him, and I think I'm better at land nav, and he would beat me by a shitload every day at selection. And I'm like, dude, how? Like, I don't understand how he's beating me. Like, I'm killing myself to hit these points faster and faster. I know he's not. Like, I've done land nav with him. I know he's not running. So years later, I asked him, and he's like, all right, man, fastest guys get out of the vans first, right? Like, yep. He's like, so all the vans are stuck at their points for 2 hours because they release however many students in 15-minute intervals. I'm like, yep. He's like, you have 2 hours to go on the roads every time you get out of that van. So he was knocking out land nav points like 2 or 3 by the time I hit 1, because he was like, all the vans are on the roads, jump on the road and haul ass.
And that's cheating.
That's cheating. But he was winning.
Unbelievable.
He was trying.
Unbelievable.
He was cheating.
I've always thought it was fucking stupid that you couldn't use roads on a land nav course. Like,
definitely stupid.
Did you ever use roads?
But handrail them. You know, you couldn't get on them.
Handrails, like, you're walking next.
You're
to
doing the same fucking thing anyway.
But
so dumb.
But
just
you're
don't get caught.
Branches and creeks and other bullshit, and he's just like trotting down the road.
I love it.
It was great.
That's great.
But yeah, so for me, land nav permeated, and like the best selection in the world you just talked to is essentially a land nav event with some suffering. Land nav translates into everything, right? Are you going to go to the right place? Can you plan your route? Can you plan your attack points? Can you plan your nutrition plan? Can you self-regulate your speed so that you're not going to sprint your ass off and pass out a mile later? Like all of that, in my opinion, goes into land nav, or just any type of navigation, whether it's, you know, in the air, on the ground, etc. So it happened that was not necessarily easy for me, but I took to it very well. And I would say that was my strong suit.
What was your best skill?
I was pretty decent at land nav. Like first guy, I wouldn't say I was the best, but I also took liberties of handrailing and whatnot. So I would say that was a strong quality. I was also really good at being uncomfortable. And I frequently say my only God-given talent is to carry heavy shit. So I was the carry heavy shit guy. And be okay with it. Keep up. No
Jariko, what was your best skill?
Yelling at people.
So is this a question of like when I was a new guy going through selections and stuff like that? Or just overall? Yeah. Man, I wasn't good at fucking anything. Like, I don't know how I passed shit. I don't know how I stayed in Ranger Battalion as a private. Like, I was not in fucking good shape. I was too scared to quit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, fuck, this fucking sucks so bad. But like, if I quit, I'll get in like trouble. You know?
The unknown. I don't know what's going to happen if you get him into passing.
Yeah.
I would say like my biggest attribute was just like, I wasn't, like I was kind of selfless. Like I would just fucking like...
Yeah, you peered really high.
I did. I peered high in
95%
Ranger school, all that. Because I could fucking stuff. I didn't give a fuck about myself. I guess that's... It's not that I was selfless like valiantly. I was just like really self-deprecating and like not a good relationship with myself in my head. So...
And nothing's changed.
But you did have one skill that you ran at 12.
I was just saying, that's a hard thing to put on your soldiering skills list.
No, but he had one skill that he didn't mention that he was the best ever at.
What?
Being a rascal.
Just being a rascal. Yeah, chirping.
Yeah, just constantly tomfoolery in the barracks.
Yeah, that was like the
how good were you at that?
The best
ever
in my time. There may have been people that came before or after me that were bigger rascals than me, but
I was a shit talker.
Yeah, it was the company we grew up in. That was like what we did.
Lots of shit talking.
Chirping. Bunch of unprofessional fucks. Like,
goddamn motherfuckers.
Yeah, I remember my favorite platoon / team, or small organization I was ever in. Maybe my second. My favorite. It was my first one, and it was ruthless. And we were the only platoon in that company that was like that. And I remember getting berated by one of the other platoon sergeants for trash talking. Like he heard kind of the exchanges that we have where you walked in the office yesterday. I'm like, the fuck do you want? You're like, fuck you, your hair looks stupid. And everybody else is in there like, do these guys hate each other?
No, shit's hilarious.
So it was one of those deals. And this other platoon sergeant just berated us on how we were the worst. He was like kind of like Baker, he was telling us we were the worst human beings that he'd ever met.
You got to listen. You got to have a civilian in the mix. Someone has to keep you guys in order. And that's my job.
I think we do well now as adults. When you're 20 years old in Ranger Battalion or Recon or whatever, like you're supposed to be that complete piece of human garbage.
Just a fucking maniac. We're just
assholes.
Out of control.
Horrible people.
Yeah.
And it was awesome.
Yeah.
It's a great place to grow up.
Yeah.
I think that's all 20-year-old. Were you in a fraternity in college?
Yeah.
I'm sure you were great human beings. I'm being facetious.
Let me say this. I have never... I am as anti-bullying as it gets. And I have never hazed anybody.
Wait a second. Were you even one of those fraternities that wears like ascots or bow ties or has socials in the evenings with sport coats and shit?
You were a boat shoe wearing motherfucker.
So, hold on.
You guys all called your dad Steady.
Hey guys, it's Dr. Shorts and Polo Shirt days. We're only wearing pastels.
Daddy, you coming to Father's Day at the fraternity?
I was in so at the University of Georgia, I was a KA. And the top two fraternities at Georgia were SA and KA. And I was surrounded by, do you know who my father is?
Exactly.
That, like, and
yeah, I believe
I'm not kidding. Like, and I realized really quickly, I do not communicate with anyone. Couple guys on Instagram here and there, but as far as like, I have no interactions with the guys that were in my fraternity. And I realized.
Do you have, sorry, go ahead.
I realized like one day I was sitting around, I was like, I don't really like any of you.
Do you have the tattoo?
I can beat the shit out of all of you. And the only reason that we're friends is because we're in this same group.
Yeah.
And this is really stupid.
Yeah.
In fact,
that's why I asked,
I despise all of you people.
When you're in the military, you come to that same conclusion very often. Maybe that you don't despise everybody, but you're like, we're all idiots. And the only reason we're friends is because we're in this stupid group together.
No, but you guys, there was a call to serve your country. And maybe at the time there were 18 and 19, 20-year-olds that maybe weren't there for that reason. But ultimately, I think that's what they fall back on. They didn't realize, I'm too stupid to realize. They were just saying, this sounds cool. But there's a call to serve. And I think that's why most of the guys go there. But the fraternity thing, it was like, I don't give a shit if all you motherfuckers are listening. It was a bunch of fucking nerds that were just, not all, a lot of skinny and weak dudes. And that's the only way they would ever have a girlfriend was the fact that they were a K or an SA at Georgia.
That's a wild social dynamic to me, by the way.
But I will say this. They're like the stuff you hear about on TV with like, you know, guys getting handsy and date rape drugs and all that shit. That never happened. I never witnessed it. I never witnessed any of the fucked up stuff that you hear about on television. I wouldn't have allowed it. But like, it was just a bunch of like rich kids from the South whose fathers, or a lot of it was their grandparents or great grandparents, were incredibly wealthy, successful people, and they just had these, you know, kids. Like, and there's some insane stories. Like,
but my point was,
God,
you
have the tattoo. You haven't answered. Do you have a tattoo of the fraternity on your ankle? The little weird letters.
Under no circumstances. One, because that's douchey, and two, I would never desecrate my legs. That's probably my best characteristic. I would never. Well, I've got this,
you have
but
good
you can't
calves.
see that.
You got some really good calves.
It's genetics.
Yeah.
You should get
Great calves.
Genetics.
Yeah, that corn stalk should go on your calf.
Nothing will. There will never be a tattoo on my legs.
No, don't touch those calves.
Next bet.
Below this
You can do
mid
side
quad.
bends or sit-ups, but
Yeah.
don't touch.
Is that?
Yeah.
Did we bet that?
What?
The corn.
No. You and I have a bet that the winner gets the other person's name tattooed on their ass. That's a different ballgame. Yeah.
What's this bet?
You got to go calf next.
And I
Can
feel
we
really
talk
good
about that?
Oh, absolutely. I feel fantastic about this bet. But I also have. We're talking about the World Cup, and we bet
Soccer.
that
Football.
the U.S. He said that we're going to beat England. That, and I was like, we're not. At best, we'll tie them. So we ended up on this bet, where if England wins, I've got to get his name tattooed on my ass.
Signature.
Yeah, his
I think you guys
signature.
should go with the face instead of the
No,
name.
it's the ass.
That's going to cost way
And
more
here's
money.
what really
No, the face on the
like
ass.
I'm a huge soccer fan. The U.S. men's national team, I can probably tell you who's going to be our starting 11. What really threw me for a loop was after a half an hour of like yelling at each other, I realized not only does he not know anything about the U.S. men's national soccer team, he doesn't know a single player on the team.
Not one.
So I mean, and his confidence level, I'm actually worried now. I was like, well, shit, man. Like he literally threw that out there and knows nothing.
Yeah.
It's just, it's
You
love
know
of
what?
country.
Covered in tattoos.
It's
So
love,
he
it's
doesn't-
love
You
of
know what I
country.
do know?
What?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That we're the best country on earth, and that we're going to win that fucking soccer game.
We've beat them before. We'll beat them again. That's your theory.
We have beat 'em.
We, I mean, 1950, but I mean,
That was a Revolutionary War reference there, but
yeah. So we've
Or
got
1812. I like
but
that one better.
the fraternity thing, like, yeah, it can serve a purpose for some kids in college, you know, like they come from out of state or whatever. They don't know anybody and whatever. But like ultimately, every single person that's in a fraternity in college, like a rich kid fraternity, realizes at some point that they are surrounded by fucking dorks.
What was the weekly event?
Oh, it was
Sunday at this fraternity.
nothing.
Not
But
like
we would have
sleepers.
socials with sororities.
Ice cream social.
Oh, hey guys,
Guys, get on your boat shoes.
we got the buffet. It's
Serve it
got
up.
eggs Benedict and
We got the
sweet
ladies
tea.
coming
So I
by.
actually didn't ask that to make fun of you. My point was that 18 to 22-year-old men are fucking psychopaths typically. And,
Right.
like they're doing stupid shit for the sake of doing stupid shit. It's just you had access to things that like we got locked into a barracks and told
My
to do
brother
stupid
defined
shit.
it. He said, Baker, after sharing some of Jariko's hijink stories, I asked my brother, I was like, is that how it was for you? He goes, oh, dear God. He's like, imagine like your fraternity, there's a lot of alcohol, but like every conversation is bookended with violence.
Yes,
That's how it works.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So speaking of young men that need direction in their life, let's talk about SOFLETE. I want to segue into it. I want to talk about fucking
segue, but okay.
After an hour and 10 minutes of nonsense.
We need one.
Has it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
oh wow.
So to go back to how I met Brent, I had just left Ranger Regiment. I was teaching ROTC in New York, and I was also coaching CrossFit as like a little side hustle.
You're big in ollie lifting at the time, too.
Yeah, I'd coached CrossFit. I did CrossFit for a couple of years, and then I like segued into the Olympic weightlifting thing. So being a former Ranger that knew a good deal about Olympic weightlifting, which actually I just had a really great coach, and I would just parrot what he said to the guys on SOFLETE. So it made it sound like I knew what I was talking about.
Valor.
I do that every day.
Yeah. So I was coached by a couple of really rad dudes. Vasily Polovnikov, who was on the Russian national team, and Yasha Khan, who was a nationals level weightlifter, but his coach was the coach of the fucking Russian national team. So these dudes were like the best of the best of the best. So through that, I kind of I don't remember how I linked up with you guys, but I started just kind of relaying advice on the Olympic lifts to the people doing SOFLETE programming. And I loved, and back then I was in, and I still keep it real. I don't get involved with shit that I think is fucking stupid or just like preying on people. There's a million fucking, as you know, little dumb programs out there. So you want to be a Navy SEAL, like programs. And I was like, oh, these dudes are actually like putting out quality shit. And like, when guys that were, hey, I'm getting ready to go to, SFAS, or I'm going to go to Ranger School or whatever, and how should I work my Olympic lifts? And I'm like, you should stop doing Olympic lifts, you fucking dummy. That has nothing to do with what you're about to do. So we vibed on that. And I just kind of was like, I don't know what you'd call me, a hang around. Like I didn't get paid, but.
Well, we had a crew of coaches that were loosely affiliated, and I wanted it to be all services. So I didn't want it to be like, well, these are Marines or Green Berets or Navy SEALs. I wanted it to be all services, not to be inclusive, but I wanted other input.
Flavors.
On a sounding board. Yeah. And so the way that we break down the career, which is why it I think works well, is you've got pre-selection, essentially, the phase one of your career. Like, hey, I want to go be a Ranger. You've got your operational career, and that can be a year, that could be 10 years, right? That could or 20 years rather. That could be a long time. And then you've got post-career. And so the things that you need in those different pieces and portions are not the same. And so one of the issues that we saw was like to get ready for selection, let's say you've got a general preparedness level, GPP, if you will. You've got a base level of fitness, and we're just going to tailor what you're doing a little bit so that you get those reps in, right? To do a 12-mile ruck run underneath the selection time, the min time, you don't ever need to wear a ruck. The reason that we do that is so that the first time you're doing it, it's not at selection, if that makes sense.
You're comfortable under load.
Yeah, exactly. And so where a lot of guys, the reason it resonates so well with guys that are actually in those units is that operational piece. We realize we're not having you ruck all the time. We still need to continue to build you into a monster. So there's a lot of programs out there that are just like weird physical therapy programs, essentially, that they have guys doing all these weird gym things. And you're like, well, you're not building this guy at all. But we need to work some of that in because he's got hip issues, back issues, whatever issues due to his operational career. And then post-career, a big piece of that is why are you continuing to stay at this high level of fitness? So we need to plug something in for that. But then focusing again a little bit more heavily on the physical therapy aspect of it. I probably shouldn't use that, but how do we fix guys as well as continue to build them?
Because it's important to go in as healthy as possible, right? Like you don't want to go in with like shin splints.
You're
and
better
injuries.
off going in slightly undertrained and healthy than perfectly trained with a nagging injury. Like if you're going into selection with a rolled ankle because you wanted to get one last 12-mile ruck run in, you're fucked.
You're going to come out of selection with the same injury. It's not going to heal. Yeah.
No, it's going to get worse, and that's probably going to be the reason you fail. Very seldom did I see guys coming. So I was a guest instructor at MARSOC selection twice. And that's not like a prestigious thing. It's usually run by a specific crew, and then they bring in guys from teams that aren't like, selection is not their job. They bring them in from the teams and you lend a hand. But it was interesting to see because very seldom, I can't think of anybody that came in with an injury, like a real injury, or like this guy's limping day one, that made it. like the guys that showed up with a good injury, it was like, you're not going to make it. This thing's only going to get worse. And I think that's probably maybe not at, a selection with float tanks, but
it's the Air Force, guys.
Yeah.
That's how we do it.
We've got some, a PJ here, so I can talk shit to the Air Force.
100%.
But is there like information out there for those guys, or is it just from the community, the guys that have been there and done it before? Like
programs.
Like don't come in with an injury, don't come in with this, don't do that, don't overtrain, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, it's getting better, and that's a cultural shift. And I like to say we're a big part of that cultural shift is like trying to educate the consumer. And that's, again, a pendulum where I have to tell my coaches, Jariko complains all the time, like, hey, you're not talking to coaches, you're talking to guys that have a basic understanding of fitness. So we've got to dumb everything way down. Like I hate using jargon, acronyms, things like that. Like CrossFit loved it.
Yeah.
And we always had to dumb it down anyway. But you've got to educate the consumer a little bit that, hey, you need some mobility, you need some mindfulness sessions, you need to lift heavy weights too. We a lot of times forget, like you still have to lift heavy weights, you still have to sprint and run hard and do the hard shit. But it's the education piece to the consumer of like, these are the other things that you need. But the reality is for most of those selections, if you're in pretty good shape, if you just show up and you're the dude, you're going to make it through, whether you're really well, as evidenced by all of us just stumbling into this shit before all of this information was out there. And so we actually, a lot of people think we focus on the pre-selection portion. We focus on the operational athlete. Like the programs that we write the most and most of our customers are guys that are operational at units. And that's where our focus is. One, we think it's the most important, but two, it's the guys that have a vested interest in, how do I stay operational with a partially torn bicep? How do I stay operational with a broken leg, a broken foot, whatever it was?
What would you say the average age is of your average client?
28. Yeah. So we're around 70%. We lumped in mill, fire, law enforcement, all of that. We lumped together just because customer surveys are hard to get really granular with. But 70% of our customer base is actively in those roles. And then out of the rest of them, 90% of the rest of that 30% are veterans of those industries. And then a minority of our customers are, guys that see value in being able to do a bunch of things at a mediocre level, essentially.
Okay, I have a question.
Hit me.
The supplements are awesome. I like me some Sleepy Time Bear.
Yeah. Teddy Bear Night Night. Don't take a 2-scooper ever again.
It was a scoop. It was a heaping scoop.
Is that what you did at the IPO?
Yeah, exactly.
It's
put phenomenal. Me out for 12 hours and I puked for a day afterwards.
So supplements are rad. The kit's awesome. The programming and the app are fantastic. But who comes up with the names of the programs? Like the Kraken or the
coaches do.
I love it.
So we had a theme. So back in the day when it was really, like I used to write probably half the programs and we really tried to have fun with it. Like I programmed curls in the squat rack one day, and we got flooded with hundreds of Instagram DMs of people curling in the squat rack. And then we got hate mail from people that didn't know. They're like, why are 3 guys curling in the squat rack at my gym? And they told them, and then they're like, fuck you for, it was in the program.
Yeah.
So there's a few things where we still try to have a little bit of fun, but the coaches name those programs. And we tried to make it so that it was themed towards the training plan. So if we picked a name, there was a connotation in the name that made sense for the goal of the program. So I wrote a program that was a post-rehab program. And so it addressed imbalances, a lot of unilateral work, like single foot, single arm, single leg type stuff. And we called it Phoenix. So the idea was, you're being reborn again, if you will, with better muscle recruit. What do you
Not Arizona
for? What's that?
Phoenix, Arizona?
No, like a phoenix, the bird.
Phoenix rising.
Yeah, that makes
Phoenix.
From the ashes and still I rise. The Phoenix.
Makes more sense.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think it's brilliant.
But so we tried to theme it. We're going to probably pare that back a little bit and simplify our programs because we've got like 20 years of programming at this point. If you did it end to end, it's a lot to go through as a customer.
I have a question. For people that are starting your programming, what's the number one mistake they make?
The number one mistake that they make is, man, that's a tough one. Not committing to it. So you say, I'm going to start this program and you do 3 days. And then you're like, man, I have to watch a video for every movement. Well, the movements are kind of similar throughout the program. So if you've learned them after a week or two, your weeks 3, 4, 12, 16 are going to be very similar.
So just sticking with it.
And stick with it.
You know what I call that? Prescribed rest.
Well, the app is super easy.
I need to watch this
I don't
video
know what
again.
that is. I'm going to rest.
I need to watch this video again.
Well, the app's super easy. I mean, it's right there. It gives you what you're doing, and then you just click on the video.
But I get it. So I used to, when we started, I was doing exclusively our programs, and then I wanted to do other people's programs so that I didn't get in this echo chamber. So I would do whoever it was, Jim Jones, power athlete, like John Wellborn's a friend. We were talking to Jim Jones, just see what other people are doing, because that's the nature of the customer anyway. And I wanted to put myself back in their shoes. So I'm not going to say who the company was or the coach, but I jumped on a new program. It was like a new person in the tactical space, and 3 of my teammates had been doing SOFLETE stuff with me, jumped into this program with me, and we made it, I think, a week and a half. And both those guys were like, dude, like I'm done.
There are a lot of programs in the space that you're in that you cannot complete their programming unless you're on fuckloads of steroids. I'll just say it.
And I'll be blunt. I wrote our program called Raider, which is like that razor's edge. The lab rats for it were my last team. And some of those guys were freak show athletes to begin with, and they became more of freak show athletes. But it's our version of that. You don't do that cycle first. That's your third time where you're like, the last 2 were great. I really just want to feel like I've got gang raped every day. That's the cycle that you go into. But it's that razor edge. But you're right. A lot of guys were writing stuff for, what we saw was writing programs for guys that weighed a lot less as well. So if you weigh 150 pounds, 1,000 box step-ups is different than Baker and I doing, or anybody over 200 pounds doing it. It's a whole other load.
Yeah.
And not only that, but it's boring.
How about this? I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Also, like some of the ones that I've seen that are specifically marketed to guys on teams is like, motherfucker, I got to go do a raid tonight. Like,
right.
What did you just, like, I can't walk now.
I can't walk, yeah.
Like, I'm on a deployment. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, and there's a lack of ability to scale for a lot of them in the sense that, hey, I've got 45 minutes. I got to bang this out, or minimal equipment, et cetera, et cetera.
That's one of the things that I like, because I always, whenever I'm doing this programming, I get special treatment, and I get to text the owner of the company and be like, what's a good sub for that? Like, I've never done one of your workouts where I'm like, fuck, I can't do that. Like, there's always a way to scale it to whether it's for how I feel or for like the environment I'm in. Right?
That is the key indicator for how good programming is in my book.
Well, right in the beginning of the app, right when you sign up, it says like, "Hey, what's your equipment? Like, what kind of gym,
or your injuries, or like." Yeah. I'm sure there's stuff that I could look at your programming and be like, "Well, my left shoulder, I can't do overhead stuff."
Yeah,
and that in my opinion is the key to indicator of how good the programming is. If it is scalable, you got to do these 3 things, and if you don't do this, you can't do it. Like, there has to be substance.
I just did a 10-minute video on scaling. So the reasons people scale is time, equipment, and injury writ large, right? And then you've got scaling for weight, but that's a whole other deal where it's like, it says back squat 225 and I can't, then that's pretty self-explanatory. But when you're scaling for injury, a push is a push, a pull is a pull. And so part of that is, one, like we're building a whole new better app so that it does that automatically based on your inputs. But 2, you have to educate the athlete. A push is a push. If you can't push overhead, then we're going to have you push maybe at an incline, right? Or maybe at a different plane of motion. If you be in the same plane of motion, if we're pushing forward, we still want to push forward. If we're going overhead, we're going overhead. But if you're going to say that your program is so rigid that you can't scale it and get a similar outcome, I think that you're either doing your customers a disservice or you just don't know what you're talking about.
Do you ever like ride around on like one wheels and yell at people in white t-shirts?
Is that
I've been trying to throw that out there for about 45 minutes now. I was waiting for my opportunity.
Change the subject.
What are you excited about that SOFLETE's coming out with? A product? You said new app?
Yeah, so as the CEO, I only keep a running list of 3 things because I'm stupid, so I can't fix typically more than 3 things at a time. And so right now our number 1 is a new app. And so I'm diving in. I'm not a guy who does programming. Mm-hmm. So where I can dive in is, the functionality for scaling and things like that. So I'm really excited. Some of the stuff that we're coming out in the app, like biomarkers being integrated into your programming is pretty cool to me. So we've hired, Jariko knows her, Dr. Kate Pate. She's a doctor of neurophysiology to help us design some of those inputs that we pull in from wearables so that we can actually take that data and change your program, if that makes sense. So I'm really excited about that. I was actually just in Santa Monica meeting with a new tech firm that we're going to be using to help us get across the goal line. And they've worked with American Heart Association, like big medical device and technical companies to get that across the goal line. But I think that's the next generation of fitness is the intelligent programming where it's like, hey, I wrote that you're going to do 10 by 10 back squat and bench press today, but you're fucking smoked from yesterday. So now you're getting a 5 by 5 or whatever it is.
So you're saying I'll be good.
Yeah. Whenever I get on it with that, it'll just be like, just stay in bed, bro. You're just a fucking
your workout is roll over.
You're just a piece of shit.
It just says, did you have 2 White Russians last night?
I don't even relax. You drank too much milk yesterday.
Logged off. Why am I blocked from the account? Don't worry about it.
But it's hard for me to get excited about other things that aren't like, we're very product-focused company. We've been bad at marketing and it's just not our jam and our shtick. So I'm excited that our new approach is just showcasing what the coaches are doing and the new products are. So that's also exciting as we've changed largely with Jariko berating me via text message, the way that we're showcasing what we're doing so that it's more digestible and things like that. But the new app is really what gets me excited.
Awesome. So, awesome. Yeah. And I know in the past, and I'm sure COVID fucked it, but like your veteran events and things that the company has done.
Yeah.
What's going on with that?
So we're kicking them back off. That's going to be between Doug, who is one of our longtime employees and a co-owner of the company, and Kate doing wellness retreats, for lack of a better term. So we call them the Die Living Excursions. Mm-hmm. Die Living is our post-service piece of like, why are you still in shape? It's so Jariko's got the tattoo. It's so that you can still go do rad shit, right? Mm-hmm. You did rad shit when you were in the military. Keep doing rad shit. My 2 things are, is it challenging and can it kill you?
Check.
Living. Check. Cool. It's hard and there's an element of danger. It's probably really fun. That's what we want to do. So they're going to lead Die Living Excursions, which are really kind of like an adventurous wellness retreat. So it would be wake up, nutritionist prepares breakfast, yoga, and then you're going to go mountain bike down the side of a mountain and watch Jariko fall off it or something like that.
Yeah. Sign me up for that one. But I've had friends that have done it with you and just awesome experiences.
Yeah. We've had mixed feedback internally and externally. Mm-hmm. Most of it very good, but how do we really dial it in? And one of the big pieces we kicked this thing off talking about getting roofied while you're drinking alcohol, but I'm pretty anti-alcohol. Like I'll have a drink every now and again, like we'll all get together and go out, but I'm pretty anti-alcohol most days. Like I'm not having a beer every day type of guy. And so at those events, they're a very social function as well. And a lot of people want to like kick back and have a drink together. So I think that's one of our pieces that we're moving forward with is putting out a culture at those like, hey, no alcohol after dinner type of thing.
Drugs only.
Yeah. Jariko's going to be in the corner with all his drugs, but
I'll be there.
But that's the change for us, is making it so that it's like, hey, this is an adventure retreat. It is fun, but it's also a wellness deal too. Like we're trying to, build some good habits and give you some tools for the toolbox so that
I think that is, not to go on a tangent about it, that's a really important thing. Like thinking about your other question about like how have things changed, like from when I was a new guy to how new guys are now.
We
like
talked about this
shit, man. Like you walk around Ranger Regiment now, it looks like a bunch of fucking NFL fucking cornerbacks or fucking running backs or whatever. And like but guys care about that now. Like they're like, hey, you want to go get blackout drunk till 3 a.m. on a Wednesday? And those dudes are like, no, man, I got to get my 8 hours. I got to drink my fucking teddy bear night. I got to like do all this. But back then, man, we were like the least healthy, high performing people on planet.
Yeah. The 3 things you did. So I went to Okinawa for my first duty station, which is like 40 years behind the rest of the military culturally. And you left in really good shape and an alcoholic that could fight, because every day you worked out, and then every weekend you just got drunk and got into bar fights. there's a group of, I think, 10 of us that left from there and went to California for our next duty station. And the company first sergeant, after 2 weeks, pulled all of us aside that just came from Japan. He's like, look, motherfuckers, you're in America. Quit acting like animals. Because every Monday, it's like coming in with black eyes, like a dude's got a broken nose.
I fell down.
Yeah, total turds. But now that's not acceptable. It's like those dudes are training on the weekends. On their weekends, they're going and doing triathlons or whatever shit that they're into. And fitness has replaced that drinking culture.
Yeah.
To a degree.
Well, I think that, the paradigm is shift because of performance and they realize they're fucked up. And there's more light on the compensatory mechanism of drinking your fucking face off to whatever, deal with whatever that you got going on.
Yeah.
And then events like that are supporting it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Where can everyone find you?
SOFLETE.com, SOFLETE HQ, Instagram, and then mine's SOFLETE Fish.
Sick.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Fuck off, Baker.
Let's go work out.
Already did.